This exact photo literally represents a collision of two of the sport's greatest anomalies. But what if I told you this incredibly famous moment, as amazing as it is on its own, is actually missing some pretty important context? Because the 6 months prior to it are just as much a part of the story.
You know, and this is a one-sided dance. I saved Anderson's job. Uncle Dana was going to give him his walking papers. He's a fraud. It's kind of like he gets in the ring and he likes to bow.
Yeah, thank God. This is my first press conference. I thought I wasn't going to get a question. I've never been less confident for a competition than I was tonight.
Let me show you exactly what I mean. I'm Balian from MMA On Point, and this is the story of the American gangster Chael Sonnen and the 6 months of mental warfare that made him an MMA icon. Chapter 1. The Mean Streets of West Lynn. In 1977, Chael Sonnen was born on the mean streets of West Lynn, as he would call them, when, of course, it's actually statistically one of the safest cities in Oregon. But regardless, his dad was going to be pivotal in his early development, not just as a man, but as an athlete. Patrick Sonnen, along with seemingly the rest of his family, educated Chael the only way they knew how.
I didn't have a choice. I was born into a family of wrestlers. My uncles wrestled, my father wrestled, my cousins were all great wrestlers, and so I just followed their footsteps.
My father was a plumber. He got up and worked hard every single day. Whether it rained or shine or snow, it didn't make any difference. He got to put his boots on and went to work.
So this meant not only did he have this generational inheritance of skill, but he already had a purpose. And more than that, someone had given him a purpose, an expectation, and it's one Chael would chase for pretty much his whole life.
My first day of wrestling, I was 9 years old. I would never disrespect my father by not showing up to work on a day that I said I would be there.
Wrestling kind of became the only job, the only thing Sonnen cared about excelling at. He developed a style as a grinding pressure wrestler, and it carried him all the way to the University of Oregon's Greco-Wrestling-Roman team in 1996. Now, despite being a two-time NCAA Division I All-American, Chael kind of found fighting by accident.
Never until Dan Severn came along into the UFC did anybody, including myself, consider wrestling a martial art.
I was training with a couple of guys, Dan Henderson, Randy Couture, if those names ring a bell. And I just showed up at 3 o'clock one day for wrestling practice, and they threw me some gloves, and we were doing that instead. So
Chael had inadvertently been training wrestling with quite literally some of the most skilled American wrestlers turned MMA fighters.
They were in there, they were already in there, and they weren't wearing shoes or socks, and they had MMA gloves on. And Randy was already a UFC champion. Dan Henderson was already a champion. But that would have been my first day into what people are calling martial arts.
Just a few months later, and Chael was signed up for his first MMA fight, just 19 years old, absolutely terrified and fighting bare knuckle. But Chael's real calling, or so he and his dad thought, was pro wrestling, which would explain a lot if you already know about Sonnen's career. He'd grown up watching it, with a dad who was a massive fan, and that includes studying the promo and the mic skills of all the wrestlers as well.
But we thought it was those guys were still fooling us. I went and did a tryout. I did a pro wrestling tryout. My father had sent me to Atlanta, something called a power plant, WCW. And he told me if I come across that Steve Austin guy, I need to really put it on him.
Chael was trying out at the WCW plant, a place where they scouted and found new stars, but the WCW were notoriously pretty terrible at this, with grueling over-the-top workouts, also apparently a ton of hazing, just so much in fact that it basically drove a ton of people away, and the plant created virtually 0 stars.
So you did 50 squats, 25 push-ups. That's it. Get back up, do 50 squats, get down, do 25 push-ups. Oh my God, we did it for 4 hours. We got a 30-minute lunch break. We did it again for another 4 hours. That was the workout on the first day. It was 2 full days and then a half day. But by the second day, only me and 2 other guys showed up.
It was a brutal workout, but did nothing to identify Chael as a potential pro wrestler, apart from the fact he was willing to work extremely hard. In reality, Sonnen would have made an incredible pro wrestler. He had a natural ability on the mic, and that will become clear later in this story, and critical in his 6-month campaign to the UFC title. But at the time, it just wasn't something that WCW understood how to take advantage of.
So I was only a sophomore. So I went to college, I finished my 2 years and got my degree, and then I was gonna head out to the power plant, but they had gone out of business.
And so Chael turned to the only other sport now in his life.
I just didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody in the wrestling world, so I went the UFC route because I knew some guys. It was just really hard. It was really hard to find fights back then. I get on a show and it's called Hitman Productions was putting it on, and Tito Ortiz was the owner.
Ortiz at the time was already the UFC champion and someone Chael had history with and previously crossed paths with on the wrestling mats.
Tito and I wrestled in January of 1997.
And Sonnen had actually managed to pin Tito. Chael had seen that guy go on to win a UFC title, so you can imagine how he felt about his chances in MMA.
6 months after I pinned him, he dropped out of school, went into the UFC, and became the world champion.
It wasn't just Tito's level of skill they were watching though. Sonnen was already studying how to promote himself and get fan attention.
My dad was a Tito fan. We'd talk about what makes somebody successful in terms of marketing, in terms of getting an emotion from the fans.
Before Chael could take his next fight though, he was struck by a sudden and devastating tragedy. His father had developed cancer and after a long battle, sadly passed away in March of 2002.
The last thing I ever said to him, I said to him, I'm going to beat Tito Ortiz and I'm going to win the world championship.
This promise Sonnen made to his father would be the catalyst for him moving forward in his MMA career, and he was going to do everything they talked about, all they'd studied on the mats, and set off to make it a reality.
So I go out to Sabobo Casino in California. I'm gonna fight Mayhem Miller. And Mayhem had some fights, he'd even done a tournament. Dana was in the audience. Dana used to go to a whole bunch of MMA shows.
Chael used his wrestling over and over until something strange happened.
I had a double leg and I took Mayhem down. Well, the cage broke and the promoter, Paul Herrera, is in the ring and he's trying to figure this out. Well, they never figured it out. They didn't have the tools. They didn't have whatever supplies they need to fix the cage. So Paul walks out of the ring, and as he's walking, he walks past us and he yells, "We couldn't fix it. Stay out of that area." They just pulled the tarp nice and tight. So you've got this hole. When the tarp gets pulled tight, it's now level. Well, we have a round and a half left to fight. I should mention there was 16 fights on the card. We were the 9th fight. So there's going to be 7 more fights.
For the rest of the year, Sonnen took another 4 fights and won all of them, but now at 6-0 ran into future UFC fighter Trevor Prangley. And Sonnen would find himself caught in a submission that would become the bane of his career. Chael had experienced defeat for the first time, and it had been in a fight he was winning, and that triangle choke, though, it would become a problem for Chael for a very long time. Next, he found himself signing up for one of the biggest tournaments for up-and-coming fighters in the US, IFC Domination, and the same thing happened again. Now, this tournament was basically a list of future light heavyweight prospects: Renato Babalu Sobrul, Jeremy Horn, Nate Marquardt, Shogun Rua, even Forrest Griffin, who Chael drew in the opening round. At first, despite his size, Sonnen was shocking everyone.
Quick left-right combinations, and there he goes, the wrestler, Chael Sonnen. That's it, man. That's what he does.
For the next several minutes, Sonnen was on top, dropping punches, but soon fell victim to a familiar friend.
There it is. Working his legs up.
You got it tight enough, guys.
Beautiful. He's got it in. He's got it in. It's over. It's over.
It was another triangle choke loss and a bitter pill for Chael to swallow, his tournament ambitions over in the first round. But that was not it for Chael, and across the next year he won another 5 fights in a row. By mid-2004, Chael was 12-2, the kind of record that would have gotten you noticed by the UFC, but before he could get an offer, everything very quickly fell apart in a familiar way. At first, when the submission threat came, Chael was able to fight out of it, but Horn was relentless. In another fight where Chael had managed to take top position and control most of the contest, he'd again succumbed to a submission right at the last moment.
I'd won both rounds clearly on all the judges. I was dominating the fight, but he'd have a trick here or there. And I could never be at ease with Jeremy. There was never a point, no matter how bad I was pounding him, that I could exhale.
Despite these setbacks though, Sonnen continued to fight and eventually got his first UFC call. But the UFC debut was another disaster, and not just because it didn't go his way, but because the same thing happened again.
Connects with that right. Babalu got a heel hook. Oh, Chael's grimacing in pain. He's got it in tight. This could be it. He's caught. He got him.
That's it. He tapped out.
Babalu Sobrul with a beautiful win by submission.
The He did get past Trevor Prangley next, but he was spared no favours and given another opponent that had previously tapped him out, Jeremy Horn. And it was almost deja vu. Chael took him down, controlled him for the whole fight until... Chael Sonnen had been submitted again in almost the same way, by the same opponent, and the UFC did not re-sign him. All his dreams and promises were immediately shut down. But all of it was kind of necessary for what was about to come down the line.
Sorry, I actually went to a hypnotist after the third time I lost to Jeremy. And I told the guy, I said, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here. I beat the hell out of him. I've never lost a round to him, and I've never won a fight against him. Something's going on.
And that trip to the hypnotist, as mad as it sounds, was apparently the turning point.
And I got hypnotized, and that's when I went on my run.
Chapter 2, Becoming the Bad Guy. The year was now 2006. The UFC had had a massive boom period in 2005 with the release of The Ultimate Fighter, which took the sport from underground to mainstream. It also gave birth to more and more promotions around the US, including one that many fans fondly remember, called Bodog.
Bodog, the actual name, Calvin Ayre, who owned the company, had a dog whose name was Bo. And he loved that dog. He had no children.
Chael was out of the UFC and he needed to make some big statements to find his way back.
Sorry to step on you, Credurance is back with a straight right.
Oh, Credur just paid the price.
His head to the mat.
Oh, another one. He is in serious trouble, and that's it.
Chael couldn't afford to lose if he wanted to get back to the UFC, and it appeared that Hypnotist did at least have a placebo effect as he went on a 5-fight win streak.
Yeah, no surprises there. This is the Chael Sonnen trademark as he tries to take his opponents down. This is his forte. Now locking on an anaconda choke, and just like that, in an eye blink.
He's in trouble from the punches. He's locked up. No defense.
Oh, he gets about 10 in a row. He's going to stop it. It's all over. Chael Sonnen stops him in the second round.
After those 5 wins, Chael got a massive opportunity. World Extreme Cage Fighting, the WEC, picked up the phone and asked him to come and face their champion, who at the time was Paulo Filho, a multiple-time BJJ World Champion black belt who also managed to rack up an undefeated record of 15-0 in MMA. But this title fight against Filho was not the coming-out party Chael had been hoping for.
Here comes the armbar attempt. Once again. Oh, my God. And Chael Sonnen is forced to tap out.
Once again, after successfully taking his man down, Chael was caught in an armbar, but crucially, he hadn't tapped this time, or so he claimed.
But I proclaimed no. I proclaimed it over and over, no, 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 and they stopped the fight. I'm very disappointed.
Despite being an obvious verbal tap like he'd done in previous fights, it became somewhat of a controversy. WEC wanted to immediately book a rematch for the title considering the success Chael had had in the fight, but Paulo had a whole other set of issues he was dealing with. They were booked for WC 33, but Filho pulled out, checking himself into rehab. Sonnen fought again that night instead and picked up another W, and when the rematch was finally scheduled, everyone was skeptical that it was actually going to happen.
We just found out September 10th, you, Paulo Filho, the rematch. Excited about this one? Finally, it's going to be happening.
Yeah, just looking forward to being on the card, yeah.
And yeah, if you know anything about Sonnen, you'll probably notice that even at this point in 2007, he was still a pretty straightforward, honest guy. You know, the idea of one-liners and promos is just not part of his repertoire yet. Maybe he felt like it wasn't time to start promoting himself. Maybe he just wasn't really that fully comfortable.
I think I'm not counting on the fight. I'm optimistic about it. We're preparing for it, but in my heart, I'm not sure it's going to happen.
Filho missed weight though by a whopping 7 pounds. What was supposed to be a 5-round title fight was instead changed to a 3-round bout, but crucially without the WEC championship belt on the line.
My heart's broken, okay? I came here to win the championship. This is my life's dream, is to fight for the world title and win it. I promised my father on his deathbed I would win the world title. This is my chance, and it's not gonna happen.
What followed was perhaps one of the weirdest fights in MMA history. Filho laid on his back, calling Chael on, but he only engaged on his terms. When the crowd realized this, the boos came raining down.
Chael Sonnen, no matter what, in shape, out of shape, makes a mistake.
At times, Filho was looking outside the cage, just seemingly totally checked out of the fight. Chael would go on and secure the win. Perhaps Chael felt like he didn't get the best version of Paulo, and the win didn't mean as much. But more than anything, he'd beaten the world champion, the ranked number 2 in the world, and he wasn't given a championship belt nor recognized as a new champ because, Paulo missed weight. And in an immense show of respect, Paulo Filho actually mailed the WEC world title to Chael so he could claim the championship in part for himself. The UFC and Zuffa had purchased the WEC, and Chael was back in the UFC where he wanted to be. But his first opponent was another BJJ black belt and another undefeated one as well. Maia was 9-0 at the time and on a 3-fight submission of the night streak.
I had very limited information on Damian Maia at the time I competed with him, but he'd only done 3 fights that were televised.
From this fight back in the UFC though, you can see a different Chael being teased here. In his pre-fight interviews, he was starting to speak up.
Damian Maia's run through Team Quest stops tonight, it stops with me, and it stops right now.
But if he thought the pattern had changed, that hypnotist had really worked, well...
Because everybody does, whoa, beautiful takedown. Right into a triangle position. Look at that, bam, that's it.
Sonnen trying to
survive. That's it, it's all over. That's how good Damian Maia is.
That right there is the face of a man who has now lost 7 times in almost exactly the same way. His excellent wrestling completely neutralized by BJJ. It had to be absolutely devastating to deal with, and in fact is the moment that Chael kind of changes forever. After this loss, Chael flips a switch and steps it into another gear, determined to finally achieve what he set out and fulfill his father's wishes. The UFC gave him Yushin Okami, who had beaten multiple high-level guys already, had won 7 of his 8 UFC fights at that point, only losing to the former champion Rich Franklin in a title eliminator.
Okami's he's a tough guy to figure out. Nobody's really had much luck.
But Chael would instead tell media that he was more nervous and worried about the result of this than any other fight in his career, and no wonder his entire future as a UFC fighter was again on the line.
Okami's such a strong wrestler. Sonnen might just try to keep the fight up standing.
No sooner had Rogan guessed that, Chael was already shooting takedowns, and he kept them up for the whole 15 minutes.
Yeah, thank God. This is my first press conference. I thought I wasn't going to get a question. It reminded me of recess growing up and always being picked last in kickball, so thank you wherever you're at. Joe Silva called me and asked me to do 2 things. First was make weight and take a fight on 22 days' notice, and the second was to be pleasing to the crowd. I fulfilled the first end of it. I got the job done.
Chael had made good on his potential after coming back to the UFC as the unofficial WEC champion, but the middleweight division at the time was ruled by Anderson Silva, and he dispatched many contenders as easily as some fighters do their warm-ups. Sonnen wasn't even looked at as the biggest threat. That was a guy called Nate Marquardt. He'd arrived in the UFC 5 years previous after winning the Pancrase Championship, the first American to ever do so. He'd already lost to Anderson, but now had 8 UFC wins under his belt, and an eliminator match was made with Chael at UFC 109. A ticket to Sonnen's dreams. But before he could fight Nate, he was already targeting the big fish, the champion Anderson Silva.
Look, I said one thing. Anderson Silva speaks English. He doesn't want to speak to any of you. You guys go out and massage his ego in the press on a daily basis. The irony there is he has such disdain for you, he pretends he can't understand you.
And during fight week, he absolutely stole the show with his trash talk as well.
My opponent, on paper, wins this fight. But ladies and gentlemen, we are not fighting on paper. Chael, you're a very good speaker. You're going to make a great politician.
He even told Kevin Iole that week about Anderson.
You know, I'm not a fan of his, no. I mean, a guy with earrings, crooked hats, and pink shirts wouldn't make it 10 minutes in my neighborhood. And I live in a nice neighborhood, and we'd still run him out of town.
He spent most of that week mocking Anderson Silva, and the fan base immediately loved it and thought it was hilarious. The fight with Nate and Chael, though, quickly devolved into a fight of the night. The first round was all Chael, and he took down and controlled the Phenom Nate.
Wow, it's bloody as hell. He is spraying all over Nate Marquardt's back.
Nate kept trying various submissions, some of which was super close.
Nate again, going for a guillotine. He's straining.
Can he get the finish here?
It's deep. It's deep.
Is he going to get out? Chael Sonnen trying to survive.
He's got to hold the hand though, Mike. He's out.
Wow!
But Chael would not be stopped that night and picked up the unanimous decision. And on the mic, Sonnen was delivering some promotional gold.
You've got to be happy with your position right now in the middleweight division.
Yeah, you know, I don't want to be an also-ran. I'm here to be the king of the mountain. I think I can beat any man God ever made.
You were a 5-1 underdog.
Came up and stayed in Portland for a week. We worked out every day, and I didn't take him down once. So I did not think the fight was going to go that way.
You were at the post-fight press conference, and I remember not one person until the very end asked you a question, and you thanked them for asking you that question. Now here you are, you got all the questions, more than Randy Couture. The spotlight is on you. This has to feel amazing.
I never even thought of that till you said it, but you're right. That is a compliment. I didn't realize I had. A lot of my mental preparation for this was knowing I'm going to get beat up tonight. I just got to make sure I beat him up worse.
And post-fight, Chael was absolutely flying. I don't know if he'd been studying those pro wrestlers with his dad since early age or what, but his mic skills were nothing the fan base had ever seen.
People don't know what UFC stands for. Some guys think this is the ultimate mitt-hitting championships. They think it's the ultimate high-altitude training championship. This is the ultimate fighting championship. I'm throwing fists at a partner's head, neck, and chest. I'm fighting in practice every day.
He even had a funny response to the Hail Mary guillotine at the end of the fight.
Oh, please, God, let him let go. Please let him let go. I mean, that's what I just kept saying over and over. Please let him let go, please.
Sonnen had finally lined himself up for a UFC title shot, and the gloves were about to come off as he lined himself up for 6 months of non-stop mental warfare.
I hope Anderson wins because I think Vitor is a lot tougher fighter. If I had to choose between the two, I'm going to take the low road and take the easier opponent to get to the championship. As soon as Anderson tries to punch me, I'm going to stick my forehead in his chest, run him against the fence, pick him up, put him on the canvas, and that's the end of that round. Anderson Silva will be in tears before it's all over, you know. But I'll tell you, the guys in the back know who the tough guy is. If we walk in the back dressing room and Anderson says put on hip-hop and Chael walks in and says put on country, I guarantee it's going to be a hoedown. So as far as him being the bully of the playground, well, his 15 minutes of fame is up.
The next 6 months of Chael's career became one of the most legendary trash-talking tours this sport has ever witnessed. Chapter 3, The Superstar. As Chael was preparing for his hopeful title shot, Anderson Silva would in the meantime fight and beat Damian Maia, at least in the first 2 rounds. Then he basically just toyed with Maia and danced around him for the last 15 minutes. The crowd booed non-stop and only cheered when the ref was telling him he needed to fight.
You keep running around, it's timidity, I'm gonna take a point away. Don't keep doing it. Hey, next time, 1 point, I'm telling you now.
Is this your lowest moment as president of UFC?
No doubt about it, absolutely, 100%. You know, I'm really embarrassed.
And this wasn't the first time Silva had been lackluster recently.
Do you feel as though Anderson, when he fights at 185, continues to let you down?
I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. Yeah, maybe I don't know.
Well, I'll give you 3 guesses who did have an answer. MMA Junkie knew Sonnen would have something to say about the performance, so they tracked him down where he told them, "There's people out there that need to be beaten up, and he's one of them, and I have a moral obligation to society to beat him up." 4 days later, apparently, Dana had made up his mind because he announced that Anderson Silva would be defending his title against Chael Sonnen. And like Chael had said many months ago, if he got the fight, he was going to start unloading with a verbal beatdown.
You know, and this is a one-sided dance. I saved Anderson's job. Uncle Dana was going to give him his walking papers, and I begged him, keep him around. I will retire this guy. He's got a black belt under the Nogueira brothers. I think a black belt under the Nogueira brothers is saying I got a free toy in my Happy Meal. Guys, this isn't going to be a war. This is going to be a one-sided pounding, and I'm swinging the hammer.
People weren't really looking at Chael as some massive threat though, but you can't forget how easily Anderson had been dispatching contenders for years, but Sonnen even had answers to those questions ready as well.
If Chael Sonnen cannot get it to the floor, Chael Sonnen gets his ass kicked. I got 2 national championship plaques on my wall that says I can take him down. I got a silver medal from the World Championships in 2001 that says he can't stop me from taking him down.
Chael had come along at the perfect time. Beating the legendary Spider was going to take an entirely godlike effort, however, but it didn't stop Chael from continuing to poke and prod at his ego, his legacy, just about anything he could do to get under his skin for those 6 months.
Anderson, I don't think, has any fans. He's the only guy in the world that's been a champion 4 years that's sponsored by one company. Nobody wants to dress like him, act like him, or be like him.
Some fans, though, thought of Chael as a bit of a lay-and-pray wrestler. They'd failed to win titles elsewhere, let alone the UFC, and he was nowhere near Anderson's level.
I beat the Elite XC champion, I beat Strikeforce champion, I beat Bodog's champion, I beat IFL's champion, I beat the WEC champion twice. I beat every champion of every company there's ever been, and there's not another middleweight living today that can make that claim.
For as much trash talking as Sonnen was doing, though, he was still being effortlessly hilarious.
I've dominated every fight I've ever been in, including the ones I've been beat in.
Come fight week, Chael kept leaning into what he knew were pressure points, like his status and relationship with Dana.
Anderson is getting fired on Sunday. He will not be with this company by the time this thing airs. Anderson's old news. He's got 25 years of training coming at him Saturday. He is in way over his head.
Sonnen was closing in at a plus 410 underdog, which was, still pretty massive, but still slightly less than Silva's previous opponents at 85. To topple a 12-fight win streak, though, seemed impossible, which is why Chael was using all the ammo he could get.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of pressure on me, and that's exactly where it should be. If you're carrying a card and you're going to fight for the World Championship, you should have pressure. I'm here purely
to win the world championship, period. And it doesn't have a lot to do with Anderson. Getting to beat up Anderson is just a bonus. Oh, I'm sore, tired, under the weather, overtrained, undermotivated, and still tough enough to beat this guy.
This insane build-up led to a pay-per-view sale of 600,000, a very impressive number for a non-Brock Lesnar pay-per-view of this era, and Chael had really sold this fight. All he had to do now was win. People had barely sat down before Chael caught Silva.
Oh, he rocked him! He hurt him!
Chael was relentless and started just pushing forward.
He hurt him again!
In less than 2 minutes, Chael was on top, and for the rest of the round, he rained down punishment.
This is more shots than Anderson Silva has taken in his entire MMA career.
The legendary Anderson Silva was taken down over and over again, and God man, Chael was doing everything he promised he was going to. Leaning on the wrestling he'd been using since he was 9 years old, he was battering the greatest MMA fighter of all time. Going into the 5th round, it looked like a clean sweep and complete domination from Chael.
Chael Sonnen believes he is 5 minutes away from achieving his lifelong athletic dream of being a world champion.
But just like it had been before in Chael's career, with victory in his grasp, the unthinkable happened.
Triangle! Watch out! Triangle! This is trouble! This is trouble! Can he choke out Chael Sonnen? Finish this fight!
He's got his legs across. That's what's. He's dead!
It is all over! It is all over!
2 minutes left in the fight, and Chael had been caught in a triangle armbar and had no choice but to tap. There was some confusion at first, as it had been just one tap, but it had happened. Sonnen had been so close to UFC gold, but once again been caught in a submission in a fight he was dominating.
You know, I'm devastated. I worked hard and did what I could do and all that nice stuff, but at the end of the day, you either get your hand raised or you don't.
Sonnen had a dream he was still trying to fulfill, though, a promise to his dad that he wanted to keep.
I have one goal, it's to be the world champion, and I'm not backing off that goal because of tonight's decision. If the commissioner would sanction and Dana would move, I would fight him right now.
Sonnen did not get an immediate rematch. In fact, it took nearly 2 years, where he had to beat Brian Stan and then an incredibly tough fight and another eliminator against Mike Bisping, who was on his own title campaign. A rematch against Anderson Silva was booked, and once again he unleashed another brutal verbal assault.
And it makes my stomach sick to see this phony with a belt when I am the best fighter God ever made.
I say the name Anderson Silva, first thing that comes to mind is what?
Fraud. Phony.
And Chael was out here claiming that he was the best middleweight champion the UFC had ever had.
A lot of guys can be fighters, but only one can be champion.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Silva the champ?
Yeah, I will correct you. You are wrong.
But that's not your belt.
Well, whose do you propose it is?
I don't know. I don't know. Where'd you get it? Where'd you get it?
What do you think? I just woke up and went and took it from him?
I don't know.
Of course it's a belt.
But for as good and entertaining as this build-up was, the second fight would not go Chael's way. Anderson was in a completely different form at UFC 148, and he took Sonnen out in round 2. After a failed spinning back fist, the spider pounced. From here on out, Chael's career would continue to see some tremendous highs in terms of promotional opportunity, the tough season and fight with John Jones at light heavyweight, or even after the UFC with Tito Ortiz that produced more all-time classic quotes, and of course, all of the extends to his own YouTube channel and everything he's done behind the booth or TV, all beyond retirement. But clearly, some of that competitive drive fell apart after the second Anderson Silva fight. As in many of these fights, you get the sense he was beginning to maybe mentally check out. Or at least it seemed that way to the majority of fans. He set out to be a world champion and always said it clearly that was the whole point. What do you do after that for motivation? No matter the rest of his fighting career though, he took it to one of the most dominant we've ever seen at 185 pounds and did it when absolutely no one else was able to even touch Anderson in the way Chael could and did. And that 6-month push he had for the first Anderson fight was him set for life with plenty of career opportunities that he'll be able to keep as long as he wants. Chael would likely not want to hear or accept this as a consolation, as driven as he is, but the truth is what he accomplished in this sport is incredible. Many trek this exact same road and never make it anywhere near the same heights as a fighter he had, and certainly haven't exceeded what he's done post-career either. Most simply never make anywhere near that far at all, and he has achieved greatness and Hall of Fame status. As for that promise to his father, he truly gave all he had until there was nothing left in him to continue, and you can't really ask for more than that. And to put it in his own words,
you wrote that, great piece on ESPN, and you're talking about how you made that promise to your father. And I'm just wondering if you could have a conversation with your dad right now, what do you think he'd say to you?
I just tell him I tried.
Alright, you knew we were going to do a Chael Sonnen video eventually. When you're talking about people that belong, you know, in the annals of MMA history, you got to talk about the gangster, man. Like, he's just such a legend. He's lived on. And this video really kind of shows a lot of the reasons why. Also, that fight of Anderson Silva in the Hall of Fame, legendary fight and moment in the sport. Just one of the most mind-blowing moments people have ever seen. Definitely deserves it. Shout out to Luke. He edited this one, guys. Go check out his YouTube channel. He does with his mate Charlie and Luke. They do a bunch of interesting videos on a bunch of interesting stuff. Thank you to all you channel members out there, guys, for subscribing, going the extra mile. If you want to become a channel member, guys, the button is down below. All the perks are down below, but you do get early access to videos, access to the writers meeting as well, so there's some cool stuff, and you support the channel even further as well. Let me know what you think of Chael Sonnen down below, okay? He's had a bit of an interesting career after all the Anderson stuff as well. What's your opinion of him now, or do you think he's a legend regardless? Let us know down below. Like, comment, and subscribe, guys. We appreciate the support, and I will see you in the next one. I've been Bailey, and cheers. Thank you.